Get off my property. That's how it started. Vanessa Pritchard, president of the Cedarbrook Estates HOA, screaming into my face while clutching her clipboard like it was a weapon. Her white SUV sat idling on my driveway again. But this time, she had a phone pressed to her ear, and I heard her say it that cold-rehearsed whisper meant to sound noble. 91111. I'm reporting a dangerous trespasser. Thing is, I was standing on my own land, 12 acres of it. Land she didn't own, didn't manage, and didn't have a single ounce of authority over. 20 minutes later, police lights were flashing across my oak trees, and I was standing in my driveway explaining to two deputies that yes, I was the homeowner, and yes, the HOA had been harassing me for weeks. What Vanessa didn't know, what made the entire thing almost poetic, was that she'd just called the cops on her own corporate boss. But before that confrontation, there were 2 weeks of pure madness that led us there. I bought this ranch 4 months earlier to escape noise and politics, the kind of peace you can only find miles away from city limits. I worked for Horizon Property Group, the company that actually managed Cedarbrook Estates, but I didn't tell anyone that. I just wanted to live quietly. My cabin sat a few hundred feet outside the HOA boundary line. I'd even paid for a professional survey to make sure of it. Then, one Saturday morning, that white SUV came barreling up my driveway. Out stepped a woman who looked like she'd dressed for a courtroom battle. Black suit hair sprayed into submission heels sinking into the dirt. "Excuse me," she said, skipping any greeting. "Who are you, and what exactly do you think you're doing here?" I told her calmly that I was the new owner just unpacking, and she introduced herself like she was announcing royalty. Vanessa Pritchard, president of the Cedarbrook Estates HOA. This property falls under our Community Oversight Zone, which means any modifications must be approved by our Architectural Review Committee. I pulled out my phone, showed her the survey map, bold red lines marking where Cedarbrook ended and where my land began. 200 feet outside your boundary, I said. I'm not under your HOA jurisdiction. She barely looked at it. Regulations are more complex than that, she said, scribbling notes. You'll need to submit plans anyway. I'll need to inspect this area. It's within our viewshed. Viewshed. Not even a legal term. She made it up right there. Then she just walked past me, snapping pictures of my cabin, my lumber pile, my fence line, trespassing without a blink. That was my first real encounter with HOA power addiction. Within days, I got 3 emails from her, a courtesy notice, a formal warning, and a fine schedule threatening $500 a day for non-compliance. All of them cited HOA rules that didn't even apply to me. I responded politely once attaching the survey. She ignored it. Then she showed up again with another resident, a nervous woman named Bryn, trying to help her enforce standards. I tried explaining the legal boundaries to both of them, but Vanessa cut me off with that sharp, clipped tone people use when they believe their title gives them the right to rewrite reality. By the second week, I had 14 separate incidents, trespassing threats, photos taken without permission. I started documenting everything: time-stamped videos, emails, screenshots, a digital paper trail that could bury anyone stupid enough to think harassment wasn't measurable. But here's the thing, I still didn't pull rank. I could have ended this with a single call to corporate. Vanessa worked for my company. She reported up through 2 managers, and ultimately to me, though she didn't know it. I wanted to believe she'd stop once she saw evidence that reason would matter more than ego. I was wrong. When 2 HOA contractors showed up at my gate claiming authorization from Vanessa to inspect my stable construction, I told them they needed a court order or written consent. They had neither. Vanessa arrived 10 minutes later, stomping out of her SUV like a storm in heels. "You're obstructing community operations," she barked. I hit record on my phone. "You're trespassing on private property," I said calmly. "Leave or I'll call the sheriff." Her face turned red. "I'll call them myself." "Go ahead," I told her. "Deputy Callahan already has my statement about your last false report." That made her freeze. The confidence drained for just a second before she threw a violation notice at my feet and stormed off. The contractors followed in silence. I bent down, picked up the paper standard HOA template, her handwriting all over it, and filed it as trespass attempt number 3. That night she posted about me on the Cedarbrook HOA group. Dangerous new resident, she wrote hostile toward HOA staff. No name, but everyone knew who she meant. I wouldn't have even seen it if Bryn hadn't sent me screenshots right before Vanessa deleted her defense comment and banned her from the page. That's when I realized this wasn't about property anymore. It was about power. I contacted the HOA's attorney, a man named Wade Garrison. I'll never forget his sigh when I explained. Mr. Brennan, I've warned Ms. Pritchard multiple times about exceeding her authority. She thinks being president makes her law enforcement. If she contacts you again, document everything. This is no longer an HOA matter. It's harassment. He was right, because 48 hours later she called 911. It was a quiet Saturday. I was fixing the western fence line that had blown down in a storm drill in hand, just trying to finish before sunset. From a distance, maybe it looked intense, a guy in gloves and work clothes hammering wood. But Vanessa must have seen what she wanted to see. 15 minutes later, sirens. 2 patrol cars flying down my dirt road lights, flashing like it was a hostage situation. I set the drill down, raised my hands. "Evening, Deputy," I called out. "Garrett Brennan, we spoke last week." Callahan's face softened when he recognized me, but his voice stayed formal. "We got another call, same source. Report of a man with a weapon damaging community property." A weapon, that's how far she'd gone. I handed over my ID slowly, the way you do when you don't want to give anyone an excuse to twitch. "Deputy, this is the second false report in a week. I've got video of every interaction, 14 separate incidents. You said to document, I did." He nodded grimly. "File another report Monday," he said, "and keep recording." When they left, I just stood there, the night air buzzing with adrenaline and disbelief. Vanessa had escalated from fines to lies to weaponizing the police. If those officers hadn't known me, if one had misread my movements, that could have gone bad. Really bad. That's when something in me broke, not out of anger, but clarity. There was no reasoning with her. This was control for control's sake, and she just handed me the evidence to end her career. Minutes later, my phone buzzed an email from Horizon's HR director, Elaine Foster. "Garrett, what's going on? Vanessa Pritchard just filed a complaint about a hostile resident and requested corporate support." I laughed out loud. She'd just filed an HR complaint against me, her own senior vice president. I typed back one line. Meeting. Monday, 9 a.m. Conference room B. You meet legal and her supervisor. I'll bring the documentation. I didn't sleep much that night, but I didn't need to. I already knew how it would end. Monday morning, I arrived at headquarters before sunrise. 47 files, neatly organized videos, trimmed dates, cross-referenced with company policy. Elaine watched the footage and just shook her head. "This is textbook harassment," she said. "Why didn't you escalate sooner?" "Because I wanted to see if decency was enough," I told her. Guess not. By 2 p.m., the conference room was set. Glass walls, city skyline outside. Vanessa walked in all business armor, black suit, clipboard, forced confidence. Then she saw me. Her steps faltered. Elaine began introductions. "Vanessa, this is Garrett Brennan, Senior Vice President of Operations." The clipboard slipped from her hands. She went pale. I kept my tone even. "We need to talk about your complaint and your behavior these past 2 weeks." She stammered. "You didn't tell me I told you I worked in property management," I said. "You never asked at what level, but that doesn't matter. What matters is you harassed, defamed, and endangered a homeowner who turned out to be your boss. That's not just insubordination, it's criminal." Elaine read the decision aloud. Termination for cause, harassment, trespass. Defamation, false police reports. No severance, cooperation with law enforcement. Vanessa's voice cracked. "Please, I didn't know." I met her eyes. "Sorry is what you say before you cross the line, not after." Security escorted her out. The door closed quietly, but the silence that followed was heavy. Elaine exhaled. "You handled this with more patience than anyone else would have." I didn't feel triumphant, just tired. She'd built a wall of authority around herself, and I'd watched it collapse, one documented incident at a time. Within a week, the HOA board issued an apology and a $10,000 settlement for harassment. Corporate overhauled its community management policies. And Vanessa's name became a cautionary tale whispered through property management circles, a reminder that titles don't make laws. I didn't press criminal charges. I didn't need to. She'd already lost the one thing she'd built her identity on: power. Sometimes I still think about that moment, her face when she realized who I was, how the power dynamic flipped in a heartbeat. It wasn't satisfying the way revenge stories are supposed to be. It was just necessary. Vanessa's HOA badge was never authority, just cardboard armor. She believed control could bend truth. But truth doesn't bend. It breaks you. And the lesson I took from all of it: never mistake power for permission.